Joining us now, Corey Lewandowski. Corey, the former campaign manager for the Trump for President campaign, also best-selling New York Times author. Who would have thunk it? He's got 2 best-selling books. It's kind of amazing. Let Trump Be Trump. That's a must-buy. Got to read that. It's about the campaign. You pick it up, you can't put it down. And then Trump's Enemies, even a book heralded by the president as one of the best written. You have to get that, Trump's Enemies. You can get it at your favorite bookstore, Amazon, or make it easy. Just go to my website, johnfredericksradio.com. There's a little link right there. Buy the book straight from Amazon. We make it easy for you. And he's with us now. Great to have you with us, Corey.
It's great to be back with you, John.
So the president, you look at these Democrats right now, and as we go forward, I want you to comment on Mark Meadows last night with Sean Hannity saying that, look, he's got transcripts not only between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page saying that they were planning some kind of a way to oust the president, but now that ambassadors were involved, sitting ambassadors not appointed by Trump were involved. I mean, this thing is almost, you can't make this up.
You know, John, I had the opportunity to see Congressman Meadows last night because I was also over at Fox. I had the chance to talk to him offline. And what he and I talked about was the need for criminal referrals for the people at the Justice Department and those individuals who tried to use their powers in the government to subvert the will of the people. We need to see criminal referrals for Attorney General Barr now, as soon as this Mueller report is over, for guys like Jim Comey, for guys like James Baker, for Peter Strzok, for Lisa Page. These people have by and large gotten away with their crimes against the American people, their abuses of power, because they've not been held accountable. And I think that once the Mueller report is handed in and Attorney General Barr has the opportunity to review that, I am hopeful that those criminal prosecutions will move forward. We know that Andy McCabe has already been referred for criminal prosecution, but if there are members of the State Department, they are diplomats who are using their authority, they are not immune from that same prosecution, and I think the American people need to see and deserve to see those people being prosecuted for their crimes.
So at what point will it actually go forward? I mean, we've heard that they've been submitted for investigation, but at what juncture does Attorney General Barr say, okay, I'm going to appoint a special prosecutor or put somebody in charge of this?
Look, we don't need a special prosecutor. What we need is equity and fairness under the law. And believe me, John, if it were me or you or General Flynn or Roger Stone or Paul Manafort, we would have been dragged out of our homes at gunpoint and be put in jail. But these guys had badges and positions of influence, and they used those to perpetrate crimes against the American people, against the presidential campaign, against his staffers, against me, and against others, and there's been no recourse. I don't understand how the Inspector General had referred Andy McCabe for criminal prosecution, and the Justice Department hasn't done one thing about it yet. Let's have some equity. So I think this Mueller report we saw today, another member of the Mueller team is leaving, which gives us another indication that the report is all but over, which means hopefully Attorney General Barr gets this report. He looks at it. He makes a decision if he's going to give it to the American people or not. But as soon as that report is behind us, you need to hold these people accountable that I am certain, if the Mueller report is going to be fair and accurate, are going to delineate that these people committed the crimes and Attorney General Barr should go after them.
And now, Corey, you have made it clear that you believe that whatever's in that report when it comes out, that it should be made available to the public.
Oh, that's right. Look, John, we've got $45 million of taxpayer money, a 2+ year investigation into this. And the American people have a right to see the entire 800-page report, except potentially if there's some very minor things that need to be redacted for security reasons. I think there's very few of those. And what we should see is who Bob Mueller has spoken to. We should see what the facts have led him to find. We should see his final conclusion, which was there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. And we should find out if the Mueller team is actually looking into the crimes that the Clinton campaign perpetrated, which include but are not limited to campaign finance violations. We know because they've told us $5 million. We know now because James Baker, who was at the FBI, and Peter Strzok and Lisa Page all said that they were getting pressure from the Obama administration not to go after Hillary Clinton. We know that because they've now testified to this, according to members of the committee who've heard this testimony. Look, the FBI agents who are involved in this are scurrying like rats. They know they're in big trouble. It will be justice when James Comey's door gets kicked down and he gets dragged out of his house and he is held accountable for the crimes he's committed.
Where do we go from here? Because there's still people in the Trump administration to this day that are still on his agenda, his America First agenda. As we speak, they're in there checking into work with their badge with one objective, and that's to undermine the president's America First agenda. How do we eradicate that, Corey?
John, look, we have not found out who the author of the anonymous New York Times story is yet. We don't know who the individual is who has leaked the president's schedule on multiple occasions. Look, I'm so happy that Mick Mulvaney is the chief of staff, and the story I read today is that he's going to have the term acting removed. Mick Mulvaney has been a phenomenal chief of staff. He's brought order to the White House that wasn't there before, and he's brought a sense of unity back. But Mick knows that there are still problems in that building. There are people in that building who didn't support the president when he ran for office, didn't vote for him when he was on the ballot, and don't support him today. And I can tell you this, I've had a very private conversation with Mick Mulvaney in recent days about individuals who I believe are still leaking out that information. We know that there's an active investigation for the people who leaked out the president's schedule. They will find those people, and I hope they fire them immediately, very publicly.
So where it didn't really seem that General Kelly, as chief of staff, was all that interested in finding out all the leakers and eradicating or ferreting out some of the bad apples in there, it seems to me from everything I've seen and heard that Mick Mulvaney is the exact opposite.
Look, Mick Mulvaney wants to have one objective in mind, which is making sure this president is successful. You wouldn't believe it, John. That's a different objective than the last chief of staff, okay? The last chief of staff cared about policy and procedure. His advice to Mick Mulvaney, as we saw, was run, right? He said he would have served under Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. And I respect John Kelly for his service to the country, but he was in the wrong job at the wrong time and wasn't capable to do the job properly as the chief of staff to the White House. Mick Mulvaney is the exact opposite. He understands what the job entails. He's been an elected official, one of the very few people who work in the White House who's ever been elected to anything. I think it's just him and the president, the vice president, very candidly. So he understands what that commitment is. And moreover, he understands that when you have team members who don't support your agenda, you have to get rid of those team members and bring in people who do support your agenda. And he started to put his handprint on the West Wing by bringing in about a half a dozen to 8 people already who he knows, he trusts, he works with. And look, you don't hear about all the dysfunction in the White House right now. You don't hear about as many leaks. Many of these things were transpiring when John Kelly was the chief of staff, and in the 3 months that Mick Mulvaney has been the acting chief of staff, I think the attitude at the White House is significantly better. I think people are happy going to work again, and I think it's a better place to work than it was just a few short months ago.
And you credit Mulvaney for that, chief of staff Mick Mulvaney.
100%.
Now, as the president goes forward, we've still got all these ambassadorships open and all types of positions, political appointees still open going into the third year of his term. How do we get that cleared up?
John, I got to be honest with you. We're running out of time. We're running out of time. Look, this goes back to us not being ready on day one. When he walked in the door, put his hand on that Bible, and said, "I solemnly swear," we should have had all of these positions filled out. Look, we still don't have ambassadors to major countries. We know that Kelly Craft, who's the ambassador to Canada, has just been nominated to be the next ambassador to the United Nations if she's confirmed. So now we have to go to Canada, which is a big country. We don't have an ambassador to Ireland. We don't have an ambassador to Saudi Arabia right now that has gone through. We don't have an ambassador to Qatar. There's a lot of places that have world impact that we don't have that person. And moreover, John, what is worse, not only do we not have an ambassador, we have holdovers from the previous administration that we know unequivocally are still serving in some capacities in these countries that are specifically undermining this president every single day. When he gives a directive, they summarily dismiss it. When he says for them to do something, they don't do it because they're on the other side of the world and there's no accountability. We have done a very poor job of filling out the 5,142 presidential appointments that he has. We should have been ready to go on day one, and we're still not ready. And part of it, candidly, is also the U.S. Senate's fault. They have slow-walked a number of these. They have been focused on judges, which has a long-term impact. But you can't only focus on one thing. The Senate
Right.
has to do its job, which
Right.
means get these members confirmed.
So, Corey, let me get this straight. We still have ambassadors and other people in political appointee positions that are holdovers from Obama
Yes, we do.
that are undermining the president's agenda on every way they can do, either by not doing anything, ignoring it, or throwing a monkey wrench in it. And so, how has he even been able to be as successful as he is in that type of an environment?
Through sheer will and determination, through a small cadre of individuals who the president surrounds himself with, who he knows he can trust. Just think if he had a full complement of team members who were all moving in the same direction as this president, how much more he would have been
Right.
able to do on behalf of the American people. But, John, look, we're 2+ years in, okay? I'm not going to keep blaming. This is not the Obama administration where everything that went bad for the first 6 years he blamed on Bush. Everything that Trump did well, he took credit for, right?
Right.
We take credit or blame for the things that we don't get done. And having all these vacancies is not a good thing for this administration. We have to take the blame for that. And the process now is such that we're 20 months from an election, and it's going to take you a year to get through a Senate confirmation because things are so slow. Who wants to go through that process to potentially say, hey, you know what? A year later, maybe I get 8 months left if things don't go the way we want it to. And look, I think Donald Trump's going to win in a landslide, but people give up their lives to potentially be ambassadors. They have to divest all of their money. And I know, look, for guys like me, maybe you, that's not a big deal, right? Because we're not wealthy guys.
Right.
But there are some very wealthy people who want the opportunity to serve their country. And it costs them hundreds of thousands of dollars for the legal fees and the divesting so that they can become ambassadors, only to sit there for a year or 2 years. And in some cases, John, we now have individuals who he has nominated for ambassadorships, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Some of them that have already been through committee hearings but couldn't get a full Senate vote. Some of them haven't been through the committee a second time. I mean, this is insane. This
Right.
never happened under the previous administrations, and it's a fault of the U.S. Senate that this continues to occur.
Well, so for those people that have been nominated and got through the process and spent the money, their life's on hold, right? Because they're just hanging out, waiting for a full vote or whatever. And every annum they have to get renominated. So as you said, some people have been nominated 3 times and gone through this.
Well, it's really too bad. And look, we have to look at streamlining the system. And you can't blame divided government on this. What you can blame is the Democrats wanted 30 hours of floor time for each person, which is absolutely insanity. That's why we needed Mitch McConnell to change this to 51 votes and 2 hours of floor time on a nominee. Look, if members of the U.S. Senate have concerns about a potential nominee to a country, they have the opportunity to raise those concerns in the committee hearing and then again on the floor. But you give them an up or down vote. And I think it's a fair thing to do. If you don't think that those people are right, then vote them down and let the president nominate somebody else. But this limbo thing is really hurting us with our credibility overseas, with a number of our friends, our allies, and our adversaries overseas, because when we don't have the president's person in a position of influence in those countries, right? Those countries know that and can sometimes take advantage of it. When you have a guy like Rick Grinnell in Germany, who's just, kicking tail every day over there, they know he speaks to the president. When you have Georgette Mossbarger in Poland, when you've got Ed McMullen in Switzerland, when you've got Woody Johnson in the UK, you've got our new ambassador in Australia, right? These people who know the president, Scott Brown in New Zealand, who's done a phenomenal job in the face of this terrible tragedy. These are the individuals who represent the United States to these countries, and the president has the right to have his own people there and stand up for what America believes in those countries, and we don't have that everywhere.
And Mitch McConnell would be able to do that, right, by simply going to the 51 votes, getting rid of the cloture and moving it up.
Well, that's right, and it's crazy to think that if the Democrats take back the U.S. Senate and they have a Democrat president, they're not going to do that. Of course they're going to do that. They're going to do it with judges. They're going to do it with ambassadors and every other appointment that goes through. Look, we've got good people who work for the government who've been sitting there waiting for the next nomination process, and they're in limbo, and they're saying, hey, you know what, if this doesn't happen soon, I'm just going to go do something else.
Right.
That's where the American people lose.
No question about it. All right, we're with Corey Lewandowski. He is the former campaign manager, Trump for president. He steered him to the upset nomination. He's also the author of 2 New York Times bestsellers. Don't want to miss those. Let Trump Beat Trump. That was numero uno. Got to read that. And then Trump's Enemies, 2 great books. He's also got the hottest podcast in America, In the Deep State, or was it Deep in the State?
Deep from deep in the swamp. And look, I've done a lot of TV. I've done a lot of radio. I couldn't do 4 hours a day. I couldn't do what you do every day, John. And I recognize that as a professional. So thank you for what you do and the message that you bring, because people tune in on their drive to work, or maybe they listen in their car for a brief period when they're dropping the kids off at school like I do. But this is hard work every day to sit there for 4 hours and talk about relevant things and keep people engaged. Not easy to do, and you do a great job at it.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And Corey Lewandowski. Anyway, buy his books. Let Trump be Trump and Trump's enemies. You can go Amazon or go to your favorite bookstore, or just go to my website, johnfredericksradio.com, and it's right there. Let's get to the president yesterday. Over the weekend, he had a little bit of a tweet storm going on. I want you to comment on some of those. One of the things that he said is he's very upset with General Motors, and his position is, look, we bailed you out for billions of dollars. We bailed you out. You never really paid it back. You got all this money from the taxpayer, and now you're screwing workers by closing this plant.
Look, it's the president's been very clear, and his tweet yesterday was so appropriate if you're a business executive. What General Motors said was something like, hey, we're going to start discussions in 7 months about what to do with the plant. Hey, why don't you start the discussions today? You guys too busy? You're going to close these factories. You're going to put all these people in Ohio out of work, and you don't want to have a discussion about what the future of the plant is for 7 months? Start it today. And so if they don't want the plant, let's retrofit that plant immediately for another manufacturer. Let's make sure that General Motors understands the price to pay when you're taking American jobs out of this country and shipping them somewhere else, because this is the America First agenda. This is what the president ran on. This is what he talked about. And so, look, if you have to downsize, I understand that, because the retooling and the modernization of the way a car is built. But that being said, don't wait 7 months to start a discussion on what to do with the plant. Do it today, because that's what business people should do, and that's the obligation this president has to the people of Ohio. He's going to Ohio tomorrow. He's going to a tank manufacturing facility there tomorrow to talk about the fact that the military is using one of the plants in Ohio to build our beautiful new tanks. But I'm sure he's going to address this closing of this plant in Ohio, and it's a big issue for the people of Ohio.
Well, he wants to get our jobs back. There's no question about it. Let's get to the southern border and the president's first veto. 12 Republicans in the Senate voting for the resolution in opposition of the emergency order. What gives?
John, I got to tell you, I don't understand it. We know the numbers now. 60 times the same exact declaration have been used by every president going back to Jimmy Carter, many of which are still in effect today. Right? Bill Clinton issued 17 of these. Never was he rebuked by the U.S. Congress for that. Barack Obama used the emergency declaration when 12 people died from swine flu. There was no rebuke from Congress on that. This president does exactly what his predecessors do, and members of his own party rebuke him. And look, if it were me, John, and I were running the campaign, and maybe I'm just too harsh, maybe I'm too hard of a guy, this party is now the party of Donald Trump. And what I would say to those 12 individuals who voted against this president, don't call us for help in the future. Don't ask the president to come in and do a fundraiser for you. Don't use our name. If you can't be on board with the authority that the president has that's been granted to him by the Constitution, which we know to be legal, to solve a humanitarian crisis on the southern border, to solve a crisis of national security on the southern border, don't come to this administration 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years from now and say, hey, we need your help in my district. In the House and the Senate, a number of these people voted against the president. And look, they have no ability to override his veto, and they're going to say, Corey, you're too hard on these guys. We're one big team. We are one big team. But when you're trying to solve a crisis that, candidly, Congress has failed on for years, no money for the border wall under the 2 years that the Republicans control both the House and the Senate, now all of a sudden, the Democrats control the House, and they give us $1.375 billion. 40 times that amount of money went to foreign aid in that same piece of legislation. And the president says, you know what? Our people deserve better. We deserve better on the southern border. And members of his own party break from that to stop a humanitarian, a drug crisis, a crisis of epic proportions on the southern border. Don't come back to the administration, if it were me, in a year, a week, a month, or 2 years and say, hey, Mr. President, come in and campaign for me because I'm in a tough district anymore. I'd say the answer is no.
The answer is no.
That's what I would say.
So if you were the political director for the president right now, you basically would take the position that You voted against us on one of the most critical issues we have. Doesn't matter that I'm going to veto it, but don't come asking me for help. No fundraisers, no rallies. Have a good day. Hope things work out.
Look, out of all the things this president has attempted to accomplish in the first 2.5 years of his administration, this is the seminal issue. The issue of national security, about border security, about building a wall, is something that he campaigned on, and candidly, the American people are upset that Congress failed for the first 2 years. And so he had to take that executive order, that executive action to make this happen, even though, they've got about $5 billion of money that they can move around to get this done. They need the last $3 billion, which, you know what, I know it sounds like a lot of money, but in government parlance, $3 billion is not that much money when you look at the total size of the U.S. budget. This is something Congress should have done, and because of Congress's inability to act, the president had to. And those people who don't think that the issue on the southern border is a crisis of epic proportions, I hope they don't come to the president and say, hey, Mr. President, I've got a tough opponent. Hey, Mr. President, I've got a primary. Hey, Mr. President, can you come and bring big, beautiful Air Force One into my state and campaign for me? Because I don't think that's fair. I think they should have supported the president. He should have had 100% support of the Republicans in Congress. Because let me tell you something. The Democrats, if they were in power, 100% would have supported their president on this issue because they're much tougher than we are.
Why do they always stick together and we don't?
Because they're tougher than we are, very candidly, right? That's just what it comes down to. Look, I like some of the guys in Congress, but they're weak. They're not leaders, and that's the difference. And that's why the American people love Donald Trump, because he's a fighter. Even if you don't like what he's fighting for, you say, man, this guy is tough. He's fighting for us. And look what we see in Congress instead. One person gets insulted. One person isn't happy with something, and we've got to change the rules for everybody because we potentially insulted one person or we made one person upset. And look, now, John, we've got this Congresswoman from Minnesota who thinks that opening Congress with a prayer, which is non-denominational, is upsetting or outrageous. And my guess is, because Congress is weak, after a 200-year tradition, because one person is insulted, they will likely stop opening Congress with the prayer. That's not a Catholic prayer. It's not a Jewish prayer. It's not a Greek prayer. It's not, it's a non-denominational prayer. Hey, God, or whatever higher being you believe in, watch over us and help us make good decisions for the American people, right? But she's offended by this. And so because we can't defend anybody, because the world of political correctness is now run amok, you say anything. Look what they did to Judge Jeanine Pirro this week, right?
Yeah, tell us about that.
She made a critical comment about an elected official who is clearly an anti-Semite. Okay, right. Let's just be clear. Right. There's no way around it. Because she made
anti-Semite statements.
She's made a number of
She simply took what she said.
She's made a number of anti-Semitic statements. Congressman Lee Zeldin has called out the Republican Jewish congressman from Long Island, and the House had to make a rebuke of this member of Congress, right? That was passed like 420 to nothing. Now, they took her name out of it, and they said we can't tolerate hate at any level, and they watered it down. But this was clear that this was about the comments that she made, the congresswoman from Minnesota. And so Judge Jeanine points out that hypocrisy, and they said, Fox News, who, I like, and I have some friends over there, said, we had a scheduling conflict with her show on Saturday night. Not suspended, she had a scheduling conflict. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. I don't believe in coincidences, to be honest with you. And I think that because of the world of political correctness, once you criticize someone it's okay, John, to criticize Catholics and Jews and Protestants, but as soon as you criticize a Muslim, right, you're a hater. But everyone else gets away with it. And look, as a Catholic, as a friend of Israel, right, I'm proud of my relationships with those people. As soon as you criticize a Muslim for something they say, guess what? You're anti-everybody.
No doubt about it. We are out of time for this segment. I want to thank Corey Lewandowski for being with us. I want you to do me a favor. He's a best-selling author. 2 of the best books written on Trump. 1, Let Trump Be Trump, tells you all about the campaign. Got to read that. And then the number 2 book, a must-read, Trump's Enemies. It'll tell you all about what we talked about today, the nonsense that's going on in the deep state, and how so many people are stopping this president from being successful, even those that are with him in the White House. An incredible read. Let Trump Be Trump. You can get them at your favorite bookstore, Amazon, or just go to my website, johnfredericksradio.com. The ad is there. Corey Lewandowski, thanks for being with us.